I also wanted to ask, what do you guys think? Did quarterfinals do a good job of sorting people into semifinals?
Ooh, that's a good question. You answer first.
Quarterfinals are over, and for many of us, that means our season has come to an end. Now is the time for us to build strength, gymnastic skills, and improve our overall capacity. We have a new training cycle starting on March 27th to do just that. If your open or quarterfinal scores are limited by your gymnastic skills and capacity, our intermediate path will go back to the basics to lay the foundation for our year-long development plan. If you need to improve movements like ring muscle-ups, bar muscle-ups, handstand push-ups, toes to bar, handstand walking, or many others, this path is for you. For the athlete who qualified for quarterfinals but wants to improve their placement on the leaderboard, our RX path will focus on building a big strength base this offseason. For those who need a larger strength focus, we'll include options to follow a standalone strength program to make sure you're getting bigger and stronger this offseason. For those who need more focus on their endurance, we will run progressions for hinging, upper body pressing, squatting, and running. And we'll also have extra credit skill progressions for those who struggle with ring muscle-ups, toes to bar, and rope climbs during the season. For our Masters athletes, we are currently peaking for quarterfinals. Masters athletes who qualify for semifinals, we will write a specific semifinal peaking path just for you. And for those athletes that do not make it out of quarterfinals, we will shift into an off-season strength and gymnastics development program just like RX and Intermediate. Come join TDT Compete right now. Go to trainingthinktank.com.
What are you drinking there? Is that coffee?
Bourbon.
I
Gotta get through this one.
I gotta be happy.
It's just coffee. I didn't have a mug, so I put it in that plastic bottle. It's probably bad because it heated the plastic and I'm drinking it, so all good. Yeah, I mean, the best in the sport are still getting to semifinals. I think the one thing we didn't talk about earlier when we talked about these bottlenecks and them kind of thinking about those workouts is still the very best, like the top 10 or 15 in the men and women in each region still kind of flew through everything. That bottleneck was much less for them. So watching Noah do the handstand push-ups, they were probably the hardest handstand push-ups I've seen Noah do. They were still really fast compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
Or Jake did the handstand push-ups unbroken at the end of that workout, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And the same thing's true for the female athletes on site, like Alexis. She's so good at those. She broke those up, but she still flew through them.
And she said they were extremely hard, like one of the hardest handstand push-up sets. I think a lot of people looked at it and they're like, oh, just 21.
Yeah, I'm going to crush it.
Yeah.
But to that point, I think they still just executed really well, and the best are going to do that. I think who it hurt were those kind of like maybe the next 50 people in each region or each semifinal where they have weaknesses still, right? Like maybe they're not great at rope climbs or not great at strict handstand push-ups. So did it sort them well from 50 to 120? Like those athletes, all it takes is one test and it would completely flip. You know, I had an athlete that was in all weekend and in the last test, just because of the rope climbs, missed out, and that workout can hurt someone. So the testing body doesn't affect the top 10 or 15 people, but it does everyone else.
Yeah. I find it funny. So Chris asked that question and then he went to the bathroom. So he must not have been that interested. He was interested for you guys. My thoughts about that would be, it depends on how you define fitness. According to their definition, I think they did a really, I don't want to say poor job, like I'm crapping on the test, but I feel like they didn't really test like the energy systems, the max work capacity very well. So I think there could be a lot of people that are strong and really good at gymnastics that got in that maybe aren't that fit when it comes to energy systems. Now, again, the cream of the crop is good at everything.
That was my point, right? Like you still get your top 10 in each region that are just good at everything. Yeah. It's just they didn't get tested in that specific.
Exactly. Yeah. But if they did get tested in it, they would still be there.
Exactly.
Now, that could have some implications for the type of person you see that finished in 30 to 50.
Yeah.
And there could be like, oh, this came out and it was a pure capacity test and it's testing engine, and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have expected it to be that slow at this level. But it's because it hasn't really got tested. And if it got tested in the open, it's sorted out by that point anyway, because it's only like those scores are no longer relevant, and it was top 10% get into quarterfinals, and then you're only being tested in quarterfinals based on that top 10%. So that'd be one thing where I say maybe it didn't get it sorted perfectly, but I think if the real goal is to get the best people through, it does that. Yeah. Any test does that.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Is like you could do anything.
Randomly throw stuff. Like that whole hopper model,
Yeah.
you could quite literally do that and you're still going to get the top 10. It's funny because then after that, it does depend on the testing body for who fills in the rest of those spots.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why when we talked earlier, it's like, well, who's being tested in this? What are we testing for? Are we testing so the best are getting tested? Are we testing so that the field is as fit as possible? Or are we testing so that way we can get the 90th percentiles to actually do the workouts?
Sure.
Which I thought even like surprises me that 275 and 185 were the clean and jerk weight, because there were probably a lot of people in that quarterfinal. Like, actually, I watched somebody who that was above their PR do that workout and take like 4 Hail Mary attempts to try to PRs clean and jerk in that workout. But let's say you were like well under it. There's one test in the quarterfinals that you're literally just not doing. Like they were just doing 5 burpee box jumps for time to get their tiebreaker.
Yeah. Sprint 5. Yeah. Well, that happens when you don't have a legitimate strength test in the open. Like the thruster could be if you hit 225 in that for a man, you were in the top 10%, which is still 50 pounds under the 275 clean.
Yeah.
And then the same thing for the snatch. You didn't even have to hit 185 to still get in.
Yeah.
So you could have a weaker athlete that gets through the open, but then is bottlenecked by that in quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Did anything come with the East-West division? Was there anything? I know
we didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
I think that's worth chatting about. You know, if we ran the analytics, you can see.
Also, can I just back up? I love how I can just sometimes chime in with like not a sentence. I didn't fucking make a sentence this time, but y'all knew exactly what I meant, and you just take over. I really appreciate that.
We don't make sense.
When I'm editing these things, and I have to get to my part, and I'm like, man, I didn't say anything, but y'all knew what I meant.
Yes, that is very interesting, and we still need to break all that down. We actually have a couple spreadsheets of the data, but I think it's very easy to look at the scores in specific regions and see that some scores are much better than others. But that also was the case when it was the regionals back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Like there were Central East had like 5 or 6 guys that were always the top 5 in the games. You know, Rich, and I think it was like Panchik at the time and some others.
But in this system, if they did it right, that region would have gotten more spots.
Correct.
So that's where I'm gonna hold off any criticism of it or any thoughts until I see how many spots are allocated to each semifinal. Because when I look at it, there's a couple semifinals that are like stacked way deeper. And if you even just take somebody that, you know, is right on the cut line here and you put them into another semifinal, they could be well above the cut line.
Yeah, in the top 30 in many, based on the data I've already run. So that is, I think, a problem that even if they fill out spots for the games, it would probably make more sense in North America. It's the top 120, and then we seed you.
Yeah.
Because look,
and the seedings automatically put you in it, and you figure your travel out.
And people still will try. Like, we're doing this because it's the thing that we love. So if I live in Florida, but I have to fly to San Diego, I'm still going to do it.
People go to Dubai to work out or go to Australia.
Exactly.
They'll figure it out.
I also think that looking at the European region, and maybe it was just a test because they crushed a crossover test. They crushed their engine test, the row GHD.
The G-up.
The G-up.
I do G-ups.
And then the last one also, their scores were better than even North America East, at least for many of the guys and girls. They probably need more spots. They only got 60, and there were probably 100 guys and girls in Europe that deserve to go based on the worldwide scores. But I just don't know how you sort it.
Yeah, I don't either. So I'll wait to see. I think there are going to be some semis that need a lot of spots, like over 15, versus others just getting their minimum allotment. So we'll see.
Yeah, that will be the most interesting thing. But even, again, I'm going back to the same thing. People work hard all year to make a semifinal, and that's their dream. They know that maybe they'll never make the games, or 5 years they'll make the games, but they need to get exposure to semifinals.
Yeah.
If they're better than 150 people that qualified for semifinals, but they just happen to be, let's say, in North America East or in Europe, is that fair to them? Or I guess fairness doesn't matter? Like, I don't know.
What would be the counter argument to that? Like, what's the other side of that coin?
You don't live in that place.
Yeah, that's really it.
I mean, if you're trying to find the fittest,
tests,
yes,
right?
If you're trying to find the fittest person, we're not doing that correctly.
Or how about we want to have the best viewership? I mean, wouldn't you want the best athletes with the best races on the floor instead of having earlier heats where you're like, well, these people are clearly worse than the bottom.
That's the worst every year at these semifinals. Is no disrespect to those people, but where you're like, man, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, last year we talked about this in one of the podcasts we did at Syndicate, but the first heat, there was no one there. It was coaches. Coaches watching the athletes, which, I mean, it sucks for them too because, like...
Yeah, the energy of competition is part of...
Like, I'm sure it's cool for those people, but did they deserve to be... Well, it's different because they didn't have the East-West last time, but it's like, did they get the right people there? And if not, then it's like, we don't need...
And listen, this is not a knock on those that made it. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
It's an awesome opportunity for them, and they've earned that right with the system that we have. I just think you're not getting the top 120 in North America right now.
What would be their counter argument, you think?
I don't know.
If it was like, hey, we're trying to find the fittest, so you want to see the fittest attempt it, what's the other logic to not having
maybe people
go?
Post in the comments. I would love to hear the arguments on that. And this is not me again. This is not us knocking those that made it. I think if you can make a semifinal in any of the regions, that's awesome.
Those were the rules. You did it.
Yeah. I don't really I can't really think of a justifiable reason of that other than logistics. But in the U.S., if that's the thing, like I just think, or North America itself, I feel like North America should just be split into two options and just. Okay, just seed people. Like, hey, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and wherever you got seated, that's where you go. End of story.
Yeah, because last year, easy enough to travel here in the U.S.
Last year, they forced people that, like, there were people that were supposed to go to Atlas games when our semifinals were in Knoxville, and like that just doesn't really make sense if you're trying to make it easy and logistic. Oh, that could be an argument as viewership. If people are local in the actual competitions, maybe getting more people that go and watch of like support structure. Cause that did happen at regionals. Like back in the day in regionals, a lot of people would like drive from their boxes to go support their athletes. And there were way more people there.
Yeah. That's just a small mindset. You know, that's like a small growth mindset of like, we just need this local, you know, these local people to come and watch, where if we want it to be a worldwide sport, we need to get the best there so that the viewership is exciting.
Yeah. And the viewership on the digital media as opposed to viewership in person, like selling tickets. Yeah. Anyways, so what's next? Age group quarterfinals?
Hope you enjoyed this clip from episode 124 of the Corpus Animus Podcast. To hear the full episode where we discuss bottlenecks making up the majority of recent CrossFit testing, judging, and standard problems, if quarterfinals did a good job sorting the best athletes into semifinals, and tips for masters athletes doing the upcoming age group quarterfinals, check out the audio version on all major podcast providers or peep the other clips here on YouTube.